The following is paid programming. Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd, certified financial planner practitioner and founder of Asset Management Resources, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. We call it Something More because we like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients across the country, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
There's Something More with Chris Boyd. I'm Chris Boyd, certified financial planner practitioner, and you're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd, and I'm here with Jeff Perry. We're both with Asset Management Resources, registered investment advisor firm, and glad to have you with us.
Happy to be here, Chris. Thanks.
Thanks. One of the things we've been talking about and thinking about that we find is longevity is a challenge for people. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. But before we do, let me just remind our listeners and viewers that we are preparing for our upcoming webinar. It's going to be held on September 20th, and it's at 10 a.m. So, but it will be recorded if you don't get to take time from work. But it is, we're talking about the retirement red zone. Thinking that football season's upon us just about.
Yep.
And that red zone when you're near the finish line, but not quite there. That's what we're picturing as talking about is the content. What are some of the things you need to be planning for as you near retirement, and try to give you a whole host of things to be thinking about. And this is something we're providing to our clientele, but we're opening it up. Anyone who wants to participate, you're welcome to join us. So it's not really a sales pitch. It's really an opportunity for people to learn a little bit about preparations for their retirement. So check that out on our website, amrfinancial.com, and join us.
Chris, I want to add one thing. Even if you're retired, even if you've been retired for a few years, you should think about checking this Retirement Red Zone webinar out. Not everyone enters retirement as they should, meaning with a plan, or maybe it's not going exactly what you think. Yeah. I would think people who are already in retirement could benefit from some of the topics and conversations that we have. So you don't have to be pre-retirement. You can already be in the end zone, but maybe you can have a do-over or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even in retirement, you can find benefit from this. And so let us be a resource for you if we can.
I know the subject that I'm planning on talking about, which is estate planning and legacy planning, is relevant to people certainly well into their retirement. And I know that some of the other subjects that we'll talk about people could benefit no matter where they are in that red zone.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So let's take a minute to dive in. You found an interesting article, I think, was going to be our lead off to this.
I did, and it's a sensitive subject. I know when we meet with clients or people coming in for second opinions or coming in to get a little help on their developing a financial plan, one of the more difficult subjects to talk about is your mortality.
Yes.
Right? If we ever do need some music, it's a little edgy, but whenever I think of this subject, I think of the country song, everyone wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to go now.
Yes. So true. Yes.
So that's a fact. We're all gonna go to the great beyond, whatever that is for each of you. And the issue of longevity is directly relevant to financial planning. And the article that I found in Kiplinger's magazine is financial planning in an age of increasing longevity. We are living longer, which means we'll spend more years in retirement than we do now. Maintaining our standard of living will require some financial planning adjustments. It's a very good article. It's available online if people would like to listen to read it after the show, of course. It just came out this past week on August 30th, written by Josh Saylor. And it's a tough issue to talk about, but it's a necessary one.
Yeah, it is interesting that people may be living longer, but none of us knows.
Right.
We don't know how long we have, and it's certainly part of the things we think about when dealing with planning. Of course, financial planning is we need to be preparing for what if we live a really long life,
Right.
and how that can have some consequence.
I've
We
got
also,
I've
right?
got an interesting tidbit from the article on that. The article talks about modern medicine and how it's able to keep people alive and healthier longer, hopefully, and it suggests that some of the aging may be reversible, and the first person to reach 150 years old may have already been born.
Wow, 150. That's like unthinkable, isn't it?
It is, and I'm not sure that the basis for that.
Yeah,
There's
maybe
no footnote on that sentence.
might be sort of a sizzle, right? Let's draw your attention, but wow.
I know I'm getting you off point every time you try to get into the substance of the material, but
No, I was going somewhere. Yeah.
Also this past week, in addition to the article on Netflix, they released a mini series, as they say. It's a few episodes about blue zones, and I haven't seen it yet because it just came out, but I do plan on watching it probably this weekend. Is that there's certain areas of the world, including the United States, that people who live in these communities live statistically relevant, meaning
notably
statistically
longer.
significant, over 100 years old. So
where's that?
You gotta watch. I don't know. It's just been teased, but it's on Netflix now.
Fountain of Youth happens to be running
Right.
in their water supply.
My guess is it has to do with their diet and their lifestyle and being outside and exercising and
yeah,
low
they're probably
stress
getting more
life.
exercise than I am. Yeah,
But the point of all this, and I'll stop just going on tangents here. The point of all this is
going somewhere.
It used to be you retired at 65 and the odds were that you wouldn't make 80, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the way it is now. So how do we approach that question when people come in planning their retirement or in this retirement red zone, getting close? How long do you look into the future to make sure that you're living to live the lifestyle you want?
That's exactly it. So and not only live, but live, you know what I mean? Have a full life,
right?
You know what I mean? Naturally, people as they age, they have more aches and pains, and
sure,
there's growing risks of incapacity. There's if you live to 150, I'm sure you'd have some risk of cognitive decline. So it's a risk anyway, right? So these are the things that we have to think about a little bit when we do some planning. And on the one hand, what if we live a long life? And there needs to be resources to be supporting that. I mean, right now, as it is, what's the typical work life? 20, 25 years, 40, 45 years?
Yeah, I'd say, 22 to 62 is 40 years, right? So
something like that.
Out of college and
45,
maybe, somewhere in there.
Typically, but if you retire at 60, for example, you're 62, and you have the risk of living to 102.
Another 40.
You could be retired as long as you worked.
Yep. I think that's not crazy at this point.
I mean, not that everyone retires at 62, don't get me wrong, but
some people retire earlier too. So
the point is you got to be prepared and for that potential of essentially a self-sustaining money machine, something that's going to keep generating some cash flow that you can use while at the same time keeping up with inflation and not dwindling, right? So to do that, you need a large sum of money potentially if that's your intention. Some people, though, maybe say, well, I don't mind if I spend through it. You just don't want to spend through it too soon. So none of us knows when that finish line is going to be, right?
Right. And it's also how people view, I guess I'm stuck on legacy because I'm preparing for the webinar, but it also is, what do you want your legacy to be? Do you want to spend the last nickel as you're you know, as you're heading north, so to speak, or
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of people. That's their goal.
or
Spend
do
their
you want
last
to
dollar
leave
on the last penny.
right, or do you want to leave a financial legacy for your whoever, your children, your grandchildren, charity?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Whatever that may
that's
be.
a relevant question in this planning.
It is. It is totally. And I think, we've talked about some of the risks that we've seen with families who are generous to a fault, but can put their own financial
Too
security at
early in their
risk. Yeah.
retirement, right?
But really, as much as it's one of those things, it's a fine line, right? You want to have the benefit of enjoying seeing family perhaps benefit from your generosity and helping them
Right.
when they need it.
Right.
If you wait until you're 90, maybe they don't need it as much, that kind of thing.
Right.
But at the same time, it's more important from our perspective that we make sure that you have the resources you need, right?
Right.
And we're not running out of um, wealth. We're not running out of money before you run out of breath, as they say. Um, so that's part of it. The other side of it, though, and as part of the planning, is we also have to think about what happens if you die young and
Right.
earlier. So whenever I'm thinking people in retirement, because that's who we tend to focus on, people near or in retirement. But at any stage of the process of one's financial planning, what happens if there's an early demise?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Or not a death, even like a
or an incapacity?
disability, right?
Yeah. These are all things that need to be accounted for. Insurance is obviously, we're kind of can be a tool in that process. It's not the only solution, but it's certainly, in some of these circumstances, may be a very effective one.
Right. And the information is the key here. Back to being too generous or living too extravagant of a lifestyle or whatever this your inclination may be. It's about having the information that if you do X, it affects the other end. It's not as simple as if I give my child $20,000 for a deposit, a down payment for a house, I'm going to have $20,000 less at the end of my life. That's a simple way to look at it. But if you're living another 30 years, that $20,000 is.
It's the buying power, the
right.
growth and appreciation that could also have, right?
Right. And so
10
that's
years later, that 20,000 could have been 40,000, could have been
right.
80,000, could have been, figure the.
That's right. The compounding effect, right? And so when we're meeting with our clients, either initially or when we're doing annual reviews, and we have all this in software, and we, that's I should say this is one of the greatest benefits from working with someone that you trust is you can, before you do these things, you have a plan before you, for my example, give your child a down payment for their home. You can make a call or come into the office, meet with your planner and say, how does this affect my long-term plan? If I
model this out for me, what happens
right.
if I'm thinking I want to do this? We're also
Yeah.
talking about doing that,
Yep.
and there can be a lot of these variables that can create complexities of changing dynamics.
And it's very individualized. It's not, we can list 5 things that commonly happen, but your situation may be totally different. You may have a disabled person in your family that is dependent on you for income or for care, and that just changes the whole scenario. You may have a mortgage, you may not have a mortgage.
Right.
All these things play into the plan, and it's extremely helpful to model these out, as you were starting to say. And so it's your decision to make. We're not going to, a good planner is going to give you the information and education. They're not going to forbid you.
It's for help you make a good decision that
That's
you're
right.
comfortable with. And there's variables that are beyond math that go into these equations, right?
Absolutely. So back to the article, Chris, how do you, when you have a couple, or say just for the sake of discussion, a couple come in the red zone, in the retirement red zone, and thinking about retirement and saying, we'd like to live comfortably for the rest of our life, and if we leave something extra, that's great. If we don't, that's okay. How do you deal with the question of age, longevity?
And in what respect are you referring to, like how it affects the structure of the plan? Or, I mean, I think there's various, there's qualitative and quantitative kind of
I was thinking more on the quantitative. Like, I don't want to run out of money, but I want to live a good life.
Yeah. So one of the things, and when we do these kind of planning, there's assumptions that we put into them.
Right.
What's inflation going to look like? We make assumptions about, we're going to buy a car every so often, I don't know, whatever it might be, right?
Right.
What's the range of possible outcomes that the markets may produce. But we try to put all these kind of considerations together. And of course, there's other things we have to think about, and that is, will there be increased costs for the kind of care I want to receive? If I have an incapacity, if I have, uh, some kind of increasing physical demands that I might
Sure.
need help in the process.
Some home care or whatever it might be.
Yeah, these are things if it lasts for a short time at the end of life, that's one expense.
Mm-hmm.
It lasts a decade, that's probably going to be financially significant and potentially devastating, right? So in any case, I think it's partly just, how does this project? Do we have sufficient resources to meet our needs?
How do you handle the age to project to? I mean, that's kind of the subject
Oh,
of
is
the
that what you're
article.
going? Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't pick up on where you were going with that. Yeah. We make an assumption about people living into their 90s. Yeah, typically, this is based off of I think an IRS table that we utilize, and then say, okay, there's, if people live to retirement, there might be a 25% probability that they're going to live to 92 if it's a guy who's married, and 94 if it's a woman who's married. These are assumptions; they're not absolute, but that means that some people could be living longer,
right?
And some people could be living shorter. The worry that planners are facing now is that we should be planning for people to live to 100.
Right.
And if your point about someone could be living even longer, that can really affect the outcome of the plan. If you're living to 100 versus 90, just say it's an extra decade, the trajectory of your plan can really have some impact, whether you'll have sufficient resources. Most people we talk to, though, will say, yeah, that is not going to happen. Or, they'll kind of question whether we, even at the 90 numbers that we use, you know what I mean? But I think the reality is, it is a real possibility and a risk to be planned for, a risk. I mean, it's a good thing, but financially, that you could have insufficient resources to meet your needs, right? That's the worry we have.
That's the worry. And it depends on your kind of own experience. If, like in my family, people have lived well into their 90s and had family caring for them and different situations. So I see it as it's distinctly possible for my family because of what I've grown up with, what I've seen in my own family. But if you had a family where people passed away earlier in life, you may not even be thinking about this. So it's not just a numerical question. It's your own experience and your own kind of bias or expectations, right?
Yeah, people have assumptions. I remember one guy came in, he didn't think he was going to make it to 75, let alone 90. You know what I mean? So he's like, no male in my family has lived past the age he was. I think it was. You know what I mean? It's one of those.
Well, he made it past it because I know who it is.
Yeah. So it's that kind of thing where people have those kind of assumptions, right?
And then their own current health. If they're 65, if they're, already have some chronic illness that they're facing, they may have a different vision, obviously. Or if they're out playing tennis every day and 70 years old and have no health challenges, they're going to look at it differently. So it's a very individualized discussion.
Well, with this in mind, keep in mind that we're going to be dealing with our upcoming webinar, the Retirement Red Zone. Join us for that. In the meantime, if you need help with any of your financial planning or portfolio management, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help. You can connect with us through our website, amrfinancial.com, or you can give us a call at 866-771-8901. Jeff, thanks for the conversation. Some interesting topics. Until next time, everybody, keep striving for something more.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's financial planning, portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at amrfinancial.com or call us toll-free at 866-771-8901 or send us your questions to radio@amrfinancial.com.
You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd, Financial Talk Show.
Asset Management Resources LLC and J. Christopher Boyd, CFP, provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is in the nature of general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. AMR LLC cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.